The Raiders just wrapped up a massive draft, 11 total players added, and on top of that, they brought in 16 undrafted free agents. Now, I'm going to take a closer look at some potential Raiders trade candidates following this draft. We're looking at a brand new regime that may want to reshape the roster in their image. That often means moving on from players who were brought in by previous leadership. So in this video, I'm going to break down several names that could realistically be on the trade block. Let's kick things off with a big one. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. The first player up is Michael Mayer. Now, I know there was a ton of speculation during the draft that Mayer could be on the move, and while a deal didn't happen, you've got to consider not just what the Raiders didn't do, but what they did. Brock Bowers is your tight end one. That's not changing anytime soon. And sure, SpyTech didn't spend a pick on a tight end, but they still made moves at the position. The team added 3 new tight ends this week, including signing Noah Togai before the draft. He might be a bottom of the roster guy, but the Raiders also cut 6 players prior to the draft, signaling they were trying to open up spots and possibly position themselves to acquire more picks. They made trades with both the Dolphins and Texans to that effect. Even though Las Vegas didn't draft another tight end, it's still possible they decide to move on from Mayer. As it stands, they have 7 tight ends on the roster. Trading Mayer would save $653,000 in cap space, though they'd have to eat $1.9 million. Let me be clear. I don't want the Raiders to trade Michael Mayer. I believe there's a way to make it work with a 2 tight end set. Bowers can be used as a hybrid weapon, even lining up outside as a receiver. But if they did decide to move him, there are several teams I think would be interested. The Titans and Patriots come to mind immediately. Dave Ziegler is in Tennessee. Josh McDaniels is in New England. And both were involved in drafting many of these current Raiders. A sneaky team to watch. The Jaguars, who need help at tight end. I'd also keep an eye on the Saints and the New York Giants. Now, let's move on to Aidan O'Connell. And again, I'll say this up front. I don't want the Raiders to trade him. I think O'Connell is a really solid backup option behind Geno Smith, and I believe he could be a strong influence on rookie Cam Miller, who the Raiders just drafted in the 6th round at pick 215. But there were reports before the draft that Vegas had interest in acquiring Joe Milton. Then they went and selected Miller on day 3. That raises questions about how committed the current regime is to O'Connell. And from a trade value perspective, there's something here. O'Connell has played in 20 games and started 17. For a team acquiring him, he'd cost just $1.2 million. A bargain for a quarterback with that kind of experience. I truly believe if you went around the league and asked every team if they'd want O'Connell on their roster for $1.2 million, most would say yes. That doesn't necessarily mean they'd give up a draft pick, but now that the draft is behind us, teams might be more open to parting with a future 6th or 7th rounder. If I had to name a few teams that could bite, I'd start again with the Patriots for McDaniels. Tennessee could be looking to move on from Will Levis, and O'Connell could provide a steady presence behind Cam Ward. The Packers have ties to several Raiders players. The Bucs? I'm just going to say it. O'Connell is better than Kyle Trask. And then there's the Rams. I'd honestly love to see Aiden go in there and compete with Jimmy Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett. That could get real interesting. Another name to watch is Tre Tucker. This is actually the first time I'm featuring him in a trade candidates video. He's heading into year 3, and typically, that's when you expect wide receivers to break out. But now, I'm not so sure what the plan is for him. The Raiders just drafted 3 new wideouts. Jack Beck in the 2nd round, Dante Thornton Jr. in the 4th, and Tommy Mellott in the 6th. Tucker's in his 3rd system, and while he's a physical, high-effort guy, his spot on this roster is looking less certain. Beck is a better pure receiver. Thornton is faster. Mellott could take over return duties, and if you caught my interview with him, I think he's going to be a real factor on special teams. So, what's left for Tucker? He was drafted in the 3rd round by a previous regime, and trading him would save the Raiders $1 million while eating $429,000. He was selected partly due to his ties with Ziegler and McDaniels. They're from the same hometown in Ohio. That connection might come in handy again. I could see Tennessee getting involved. I'll throw out the Dolphins, especially with all the off-field questions around Tyreek Hill. The Ravens would be a great fit too. Tucker's a high school wrestling champ and plays with a chip on his shoulder. That's the kind of player Baltimore loves. I'd also include the Bengals and Steelers. Tucker fits that AFC North toughness. Now, let's talk about Dylan Parham. He's been a starter for 3 years and is entering the final year of his rookie deal. If the Raiders aren't confident he's part of their long-term plans, this could be the time to move him while his value is high. The team added Alex Kappa this offseason, re-signed Jordan Meredith, and drafted Caleb Rogers, who, like Parham, is versatile and can play across the line. Rogers has seen time at left tackle, left guard, and right tackle. Add in Charles Grant, who works primarily on the left side, and suddenly you've got depth everywhere. From a locker room standpoint, trading Parham would not be popular. He's well-liked and considered a glue guy among the offensive linemen. Just the other day, he was spotted at a Golden Knights game with Colton Miller, Jackson Powers-Johnson, some rookies, and Dalton Wagner. Thayer Munford was likely there too. Parham is clearly a respected voice in that room. But from a front office lens, if you're trying to build for the future and you can save $3.7 million while eating just $228,000, it's worth exploring. He's valuable because of his versatility. Now, let's flip to the defensive side of the ball and talk about Tyree Wilson. If Vegas did decide to trade Wilson, the best timing would be after June 1st. That way, they save $3 million and eat only $3 million. That's a more manageable financial move than if they had done it earlier. The Raiders re-signed Malcolm Kunze, brought back Adam Butler, and drafted 2 versatile defensive tackles, guys who can also line up at edge. That's concerning for Wilson, who has that same positional flexibility. If Wilson were to be dealt, I'd bet on 2 teams with Texas ties: the Cowboys, where he trains and where his agent is based, and the Texans. The Jets are always looking for elite athletes, and the Eagles love taking chances on former first-rounders. Don't rule out the Falcons either. Let's wrap up with Tommy Eichenberg. He was a 5th-round pick in 2024, and I think you could make a case for Amari Burney here too, but Iikenberg seems like the more likely trade candidate. The Raiders just drafted Cody Lindenberg in the 7th round, and while that's a later pick, the styles of play between him and Iikenberg are similar. Burney, on the other hand, is more of an athletic upside guy. Lindenberg's selection shows the Raiders want depth and competition at linebacker, and they also brought in a ton of athletic, traits-heavy players through undrafted free agency. Iikenberg doesn't really fit that mold. He's more of a classic, instinctual linebacker. He was a solid college player and could still develop, but if the Raiders move on, he might be more valued elsewhere. I could see the Patriots being interested. From a needs standpoint, teams like the Panthers and Seahawks are thin at linebacker. Iikenberg might not be flashy, but he's always around the ball, and some coaching staff still value that above all else. So, these are my top Raiders trade candidates after the draft. None of these players, to my knowledge, are being actively shopped. But based on what I've seen, the moves the Raiders have made, and what I'd do if I were running another NFL team,